hi everybody, I'm Mr. Rogers, apparently. That's how I've decided to dress today. And the name of the talk is probably pretty self-explanatory, hopefully. I have a song right after this, and I wanted to see if anyone can guess or wants to guess what it might be. And it's very much related to this topic. Does anyone have any guesses? Yes?
Spice Girls Wannabe?
Spice Girls Wannabe.
Tell me what you want.
Tell me what you want, what you really want. So tell me what you want. Okay, that's a good guess, but no. Anyone? No?
You can't solicit questions.
Can't solicit questions? Ha. Okay.
Their name, I'm looking for some Wang Chung, but
Ah.
my breath there.
Okay, I'll tell you what it is.
Video killed the radio star. Video killed the radio star.
So that song is what MTV played first when they launched in the 80s, right? And that was a pretty unapologetic way of saying screw radio.
We're not going to get copyright struck for that, right?
It's fair use. It was like 5 seconds.
I hope. That's the exact time I played the Daft Punk video.
Okay, I'm sorry. Anyway, we can go and if they do a DMCA takedown, we'll just do an anti-takedown. Anyway, so
We'll counter their counter.
well, you know how the DMCA works, right?
Yeah.
That's a real thing. That's the legal mechanism.
Yeah.
We're getting off topic. This is not about the Digital Millennium Copyright
Just trying
Act.
to make sure this works.
Okay? It's about, we're going to start with the Assembly Rebellion. So none of us were alive in the 40s or whatever, but in the 50s, the earliest computers you had, which were like these huge mainframes, right? People would write literal code to tell what the registers would do, like literally every single part of the computer, it would tell it exactly what to do. You know, what stuff to store in this thing, what to get out, what thing to do. That sounds really tedious, and for those of us who've gotten computer engineering or computer science degrees, we had to do that in our architecture classes, right? Well, imagine if all we had was still those architecture classes, and you didn't have anything like assembly or high-level language like Fortran. That would really suck, wouldn't it? Well, in the 50s, that's exactly what people wanted to keep doing. They were like, well, we need to be efficient. Fortran is super inefficient because it compiles down to all this junk. But the reality is, now we have compilers that are like the core of what we have of writing modern software, lower level computing. And this is just ridiculous to even think about that we'd stick with assembly forever. In the 80s, we had educators who didn't want calculators in classrooms. You'd have high school math teachers who were like, oh my gosh, people will not learn calculus if we give them, graphing calculators or TI-83s. Now, when I went through school, 15 years ago, I had a TI-84, then I had TI-Nspire, and yeah, it could do integrals for me, but that didn't stop me from knowing how to integrate, how to take an antiderivative, et cetera, right? So again, it's kind of ridiculous now that you think about it, but that was a thing back then as well. Then you had the internet bah era, right? I can just hear Mark Hirschberger saying bah, the internet, right?
You're right, that's exactly how I sound.
That's exactly, sorry, Mark. So yeah, I mean, sure, you had the internet bubble, but this was just straight up saying it's a fad and it's not going to be used anymore. Obviously, I don't have to tell you how wrong that is. But to give you some context, the guy who wrote this article was the truth that is in no online database will replace your daily newspaper. That's false. No CD-ROM can take the place of a competent teacher. What Gen Alpha knows what a CD-ROM is, right? And no computer network will change the way government works. Hello? This is ridiculous, and we're all laughing because this is just insane. This guy's so wrong. Anyway. And then we had cloud skepticism, which might be a little bit more controversial because it's more recent, But companies were like, oh, we're never going to move to the cloud. And yet, that's what is powering Amazon, Microsoft, Google, and Oracle's stock now. So, oh, sorry, before 2023. And now it is, global standard for security, massive scalability, and I know Microsoft is moving to sovereign cloud, so even governments are moving onto the cloud, but their own cloud. But yeah, all this skepticism, I would say, is just history repeating itself. It's video killed the radio star, but now it's all these other things. And I want to point out a caveat that, yes, manual and analog techniques are still used, right? We still will write assembly and do arithmetic manually in certain cases, right? I've written assembly personally before, and sometimes it is necessary, but not every day. And it's like one day out of my life I've written assembly. Not everything runs on the internet, right? Sometimes because we have incompetent healthcare systems, but other times it's because we cannot put it on the internet, right? And there are still legitimate use cases that we don't use the cloud for. But that doesn't mean that it discards the relevance of all of this, right? So the takeaway is that tools don't replace the creator. They raise the ceiling of what a single creator can achieve. And so I think AI is that next layer of abstraction. So I know that's a controversial thing to say, and I've already had discussions with folks here about AI not being the future or just not being a panacea, and I get that. There are a lot of philosophical examples against what I've just said as well, right? Like we're not going to give a 5-year-old a TI-84 because they're not going to learn algebra, right? We have to let them do it first. And there's always the argument that you want to, source organically, sustainably, ethically, that even though it's harder, you're doing it in a better way, and that extra mile you go, the extra effort you put in, the extra money that you pay is better. And you could make that argument about human written code now as well. And so I get all of these, thoughts, and I acknowledge them, but I would love for y'all to just hear what I have to say for the next 20 minutes. And after that, it's a free-for-all, okay? All right, so what can we do about AI's proliferation? We have 4 options. The first is we pretend it doesn't exist, which is what that Clifford guy from the 90s did. Number 2, acknowledge its existence but ban it from being used, and that's a I won't go into details, but that's become a common occurrence I'm starting to see online, and you can probably guess what my position is on that. The third is you can allow AI to be used without guardrails, which is what the movie, I don't know, huh? Yeah, Terminator something, yeah, is based on, right? And then the fourth is to embrace AI with structure and discipline. So that was a rhetorical slide. Is AI the future of coding? So I believe, I didn't know whether it was a year ago, but I can say at this point, unequivocally, I believe it is. All right, it's not AI coding is not a joke anymore. Last year I showed you stuff from Gemini that produced a code that had spaces in the method name and it was in German. Obviously that's a joke. It's not a joke anymore. When you get agentic mode, when you have models that are extremely capable, like Claude Opus 4.6, the code works instantly. It's crazy. Sometimes you don't even need to use agent mode. It does one shot, it gets it right, exactly what you want it to do. It's scary good. Other times you do still have inconsistent results and things don't work so well. We do find that small greenfield code bases are still the easiest to write. So if you want to make a quick calculator application or a small React component, that's probably the easiest. Making changes to existing code bases though requires quite a bit of caution, and depending on how you go about it, it can be wildly successful, epically fail, or somewhere in between. So we want to keep that in mind. But regardless, rather than dismissing all of this, we do want to embrace it with the right mindset, because it is the future. And so the end goal is really to learn to work with AI to achieve your desired result. Before we dive in further, I want to give some context. So for the rest of this presentation, let's assume that P does not equal NP. Then we can say, and if you're not familiar with this concept, it's basically saying, is it going to take the same amount of effort to verify the solution to a problem as it is to solve the problem? It's an unsolved problem in computer science. Most people suspect that it's not true for pretty, that's a very, what's it called? Intuitive idea that humans have, that things are easier to verify than to solve. But that's exactly what we want to focus on here, is that if that indeed is the case, then we should be just being more efficient. We should focus on verification instead of having to do it ourselves. Let's let AI start doing it faster for us and with less effort. And so there are genuine benefits of AI that we can leverage that hopefully are not controversial. So it can read documentation faster. It can write tests faster. It can type faster. And I've addressed all of the arguments against typing speed here, but basically what I'm trying to say is, why not take advantage of these obvious wins? We can use these in a way that's safe. To give you a quick overview of what's been done so far in my journey to try to find AI Zen in MediaWiki. So in May 2025 in Sandusky, Ohio, I showed 3 examples. Successfully did write crawler protection based off of vibe coding. I was able to make successful front-end additions to MyWiki's wiki chat, and but I did fail to create a passkey authentication extension like I wanted to. But a few months later, in time for the Hanover conference, I was able to make it. Yes, there was a lot of dead code, and Cindy said in the nicest way possible that a lot of it was really, really bad, but it did work. And yes, it used Session Manager, but the important thing is it was able to actually create something, and that's progress. So what's happened since then? Well, Anthropic released Claude Opus 4.6 in agentic mode, and it became the prevailing model for agentic software development. Just as John Morey was saying, right? Most people raise their hands when who do vibe code or whatever, whenever he asks, like, do you all use Claude Code? And I will say that, yeah, most of my friends are actually now paying to use Claude, if not paying the $200 a month for Claude Max. There is, I think, an indisputable shift now among developers in general towards Claude models and tools for AI-based coding. And the Canasta code base, which I think Cindy will talk about in a bit, it is increasingly being written with the help of AI assistants, such as from Claude Code. There's something called prompt engineering, which you probably remember me talking about. It's now on its way out in favor of something called context engineering. I showed this at the last conference. I've removed the not so appropriate stuff from this, but this is a meme from 2023. I have since updated it for 2026. So I want to say that context engineering or whatever, it's not going to be the future, but it is a good heuristic of where we're headed and the kind of approaches that we should be taking while we are trying to leverage the benefits of AI-assisted coding. So the definition is process of designing, structuring, and optimizing information, blah, 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 feed it to LLMs. And this is becoming ever more important because what it's saying is, if we want to make good code results, we still have to do a lot of preparation. It can't just be how you write the question, right? If I give you guys, pose a question, you probably would like to have some context behind that question, and you probably would like to have, oh, hi camera, I'm actually here. So, sorry, what was I saying? You want to have context, right? And ideally, you'd also have enough information in the background to answer my stuff correctly, right? So that way, when I'm in Hanover and I ask a question, about like, yeah, what coding mechanism do you use? I don't get a response in German because the person responding to that question will know that I speak English. That's the same thing here. You want to give it as much information as possible, but in a concise way. And so you want to ensure all your context is relevant, has a positive tone, no negatives, and is complete and not missing anything. So yeah, fun fact, if you tell an AI to not do this, not do that, it will more often than not make a mistake. You want it to be have a positive reinforcement, just like with a human, right? If you want to tell a kid no, they're not going to be happy about it, and you usually only do it when it's like they're absolutely messing up. But if you say like, hey, instead of this, let's do that. It works with humans well, and it works with AI well as well. That's a fun fact. Going back, though, to context engineering, people are going to extreme lengths. Have you guys heard of the Chinese token trick? So Chinese is a very compact language, and people are starting to write stuff in Chinese to reduce the number of tokens they use, which means they reduces the amount of money you pay to get what they hope is the same result as asking the same thing in English. I've not done it yet. I still prefer to write in English, but I thought it was pretty funny. I asked Gemini just to get its view on it, and it's talking about information theory and the token tax, and so there are certain things to worry about this. I would say it's kind of a fad to be careful about. But the point is that people are going to extreme lengths to try to optimize for tokens and stuff. And on that note, I'm going to switch over now to something a little bit more different. Now that you've known what context engineering is, let's move on to what agentic development is. So it didn't really exist a year ago. Like in March 2025, it wasn't a thing. Now it is. And it's basically iterative development, right? I guess the equivalent in human stuff is like, if you try something and you get it wrong, you try it again. It's the same thing with AI. It's saying, you know what, it's okay if AI makes a mistake the first time. What's important is that it checks its work automatically and that it realizes, oh, this isn't right, let's go fix that. And eventually, with enough reinforcement, it's going to learn what to do. And it used to only exist in IDEs, such as like Cursor, Windsurf, the GitHub Copilot extension on Visual Studio and VS Code. That's what I've been using and showing for the last few presentations and for the past few years at work. But now you have different media on which it's located. You can do it on the GitHub website, so github.com. And now increasingly, you can do it on a command line interface, which we'll talk about in a bit. So website-based agent coding like github.com, it's an interesting, and I would say it's pretty convenient approach. It's been integrated directly into GitHub at many points, such as the top of every GitHub page, right next to the search bar, directly in the repository's file listing, which I don't show up here, but you can see it for yourself, in an issues page where I can assign a Copilot as an assignee to work on an issue and or a pull request. Oh, sorry, directly in the repository files listing is right here. You'll be able to see a button, this button over here that you can press and get into an agent session. And then in a pull request page, yeah, I'm able to give feedback to Copilot, and whenever it makes a PR, I'll say, hey, can you just double check that? Can you change this? And it actually goes and does it for me, which is really cool. And it's a agentic mode, so it's, anyway, it's great for quick changes because it's on a website, you don't have to download anything, but it's also designed to be fully autonomous. And we are still, I think, in a stage where manual changes are sometimes needed, or at least to prod things the right way. So it's hard to make manual changes. If you didn't prompt it the right way, you're kind of screwed and you have to start all over. It's just kind of a mess. Whereas, on an IDE, if I prompt it slightly wrong, it generates like 90% of the work. I can go in and just type through 10% of the stuff, and I'm happy. Can't do that here, but that's fine. It's still really convenient and cool, though. So there's also CLI-based AI coding tools which have proliferated over the past year. So you're basically moving away from coding in an IDE, and they're saying, you know what, like the IDE doesn't have to be the center of coding anymore. We can just do it from the command line itself. You're not confined anymore to the IDE's walled garden. And everything is possible through a CLI. That's the benefit. Examples of that, I would say, are Claude Code, as John was showing earlier. The GitHub Copilot CLI is a competitor. That's what I use because all my tokens are paid for by Microsoft. But if I didn't get that, I would probably pay for Claude Code or Claude Max, whatever it's called. Atlassian has their own version. I'm sure there's more other versions as well, but or competitors. But in any case, the CLI is kind of, the problem is it's kind of unstructured. So they've been very intelligent about how to leverage the CLI and to empower it. And they've added stuff like plan mode in Claude Code and in GitHub Copilot CLI, which accepts a prompt. It reads any existing code. If clarification is needed, questions will actually be asked to the person making the prompts and be like, hey, by the way, did you mean this? And it'll even give you several options, which I'll show in a bit. And then it actually generates a concrete written plan to be used for implementation. And you can actually directly feed that into the next implementation phase. And if you trust it enough, you can even do something called autopilot mode, which is available on GitHub Copilot CLI. Claude Code's equivalent is called dangerously skip permissions, which just lets you do whatever you want. But yeah, it does things without needing to confirm permissions, and that makes coding ever more so autonomous and vibey. So this is a really cool, I think, advancement, I would say, and it saves a lot of time. So the example of plan mode is you will ask something that probably is like under 1,000 words, and it's going to fill in the blanks. So over here, I actually typed in everything over there. I said implement a MediaWiki extension based on the format in crawler protection and the following specs, which I have just pasted in there verbatim, told it what to do. In this example, I was trying to make something to issue an HMAC token centrally after a challenge had been solved so that a user can go back to the wiki page and actually access it. It'll save, anyway, it'll generate this, save it in a temporary file, and then what you can do is that plan.md, it'll be stored in a temporary thing. It might even ask a clarification question. So it asked me, should logged in MediaWiki users be exempt from the anti-bot challenge? And I said, yes, they were always exempt. Thanks for clarifying. And once it has all the ambiguity resolved, it will be able to generate it. It'll give you a plan ready for review. It'll go over exactly how the overall flow works. You can accept the plan. You can do it on autopilot. You can do it on default permissions where it prompts you to confirm some things. You can exit and prompt it yourself, or you can tell it to change the plan if it's not exactly what you were looking for. So that part is the first cool thing about a CLI. The second, I think, is leveraging tool calling. So as John was showing earlier, he had the JMori agent that would go in and do things on his Outlook and stuff. That's basically that's a tool, and tools are essentially what they're the senses of the agent. So if I couldn't see, smell, taste, hear, or touch anything, my brain power would not be very useful. But with all the tools that I have as a person, I'm able to do so much more, right? So examples of tools would be like letting the AI LLM web search, access to contents of a web page, running commands on the system that helps it do development tasks, even custom CLI commands like PHP-specific stuff or PyTest, Composer, pip, etc. And at the most advanced level, specific MCP clients to go and do very specific things. This is where CLI-based agentic coding shines. It's beyond the confines of your IDE, and you'll just notice that it can just do so many more things without being constrained in a single place. So with all of that, though, you've noticed that we had plan mode built into Copilot CLI. It's built into Claude Code. There's a reason for that. It's because structure is still definitely key. When you add structure, it means a higher probability of agentic coding getting it right the first time. You're decreasing the entropy in the system. So examples of software engineering best practices are what really help it know what to do. So for instance, if you guys have looked at the code base of MediaWiki extensions, you'll notice that pluggable auth is actually a pretty good example of how to write a well-architected MediaWiki extension that follows MediaWiki best practices. I asked Cindy to confirm that, and she said yes. So it must be true, right? For those of you who don't know, that's the author of pluggable auth. But in all seriousness, like, you know, if you go through like the Wikimedia like best practices and the code of code style manual and all of that stuff, you'll notice. Oh my gosh. Okay. Sorry, I need to speed up. Okay. It's a good example. So helps AI code better. And it's really important that we follow best practices in software engineering. I know that that's not what people are used to, but you know, that is going to be what brings AI coding to the next level. And I know a lot of people who've learned to code on, you know, these coding websites, Khan Academy. That's great, but we've now reached the next step. You gotta go to senior engineering boot camp and learn all these things. Like for instance, by a show of hands, who knows the concept that business logic should never mix with controller code? Raise your hand. Okay, but it's not everybody, and that's the point, is that these are things that you still have to like teach to people in order to get AI to do what you want. So my proposal is that we as the community can create a series of best practices for writing MediaWiki extensions with AI tools and context engineering. Giving good examples, adapting all of these things, and most importantly, helping newcomers learn these principles, I think is going to be the most helpful thing. The next goal is to have a MediaWiki developer MCP server, and that's going to go beyond what Jeroen de Douw wrote. Instead of just interfacing within MediaWiki, you'll be able to do all the sysadmin stuff MediaWiki, such as creating a new MediaWiki thing, creating like, you know, having it install an extension, stuff like that. That, if you hook it up then with your coding agent of choice, you'll be able to do end-to-end tests automatically. And that's important for what Daniel did yesterday, right? He said, oh, we don't have this. Well, if we do have this, it'll be very trivial to do. It's just an idea at the moment. My idea is to do it with Canasta CLI, but at the end of the day, I think anyone can code, right? It doesn't mean everyone should code AI slop. It means anyone who puts in the effort to learn to do it the right way should be able to create a good extension. And what Anton Ego said at the end of Ratatouille when he realized that he shouldn't have killed Auguste Cousteau is that not everyone can become a great artist, but great artists can come from anywhere. That's the kind of attitude that we should have. So I'm really fully convinced that the future is this, and I hope that we can converge on a common set of principles, and anyone who learns AI agents code correctly should be able to create their own extension. I don't think we have time for questions, unfortunately. I really would love to answer them. Cindy, do I have time for questions? Cindy, do I have time for questions?
One or two questions.
One or two questions. Okay, James.
Oh, sorry.
And more questions to be asked online. I'm going to go to the live chat after this.
So I've tried to use AI to code 3 different MediaWiki extensions, and it always fails because with MediaWiki, it's a very rich amount of context, a bunch of classes, a bunch of class methods, and that's one layer of the problem. The other layer of the problem is that Wikimedia keeps changing it. So
keeps changing what?
Keeps changing the class methods. No, MediaWiki always makes breaking changes.
Okay, yeah.
So so if you're doing proper context management, do you need to like have all of MediaWiki core cloned so that it knows what it's doing?
Ideally, yes, and so that it can summarize the important parts of it. If you're giving it all of MediaWiki, you're not going to pass it all into the context whenever it asks a question. It'll be smart enough in agent mode to be able to identify the part that's actually relevant using not actual AI stuff, like RAG stuff, to like go and search through the code, find the appropriate things, and then use that as the context. And that's context engineering. Any more questions? Or we're just
I
doing
don't
online?
think we have time now.
All right, we're going to do it online. Thank you all so much.